Daehyun checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The spaceport was busier than usual, and he still had a dozen systems to check before the big arrival. His daughter Hana sat on a chair nearby, swinging her legs and coloring in her book. The daycare had closed unexpectedly, and he had no choice but to bring her to work. "Daddy, is the Space Queen coming today?" Hana asked without looking up from her drawing. "Empress, sweetie. She's called an Empress. And yes, she'll be here soon," Daehyun said, running a diagnostic on the landing pad systems. Everything had to be perfect. This was the first time the Thalvex Empire had contacted humanity. One mistake could start a war. The child nodded and went back to coloring what looked like a purple dragon. Daehyun smiled despite his stress. Hana had his late wife's fearless curiosity. Jiwoo would have loved to see this day. She had always believed humanity would find friends among the stars. 2 hours later, the Thalvex ship descended from the sky. It was massive, shaped like a crystal mountain that caught the sunlight and threw rainbows across the landing pad. Daehyun had seen plenty of ships in his years as chief engineer, but nothing like this. The ship didn't make a sound as it landed. It simply appeared to float down and settle as gently as a feather. "Wow," Hana whispered, her coloring book forgotten. "Stay close to me, okay?" Daehyun said, taking her hand. "We need to watch from the observation deck." They made their way to the upper level where Ambassador Tae-sung and his team were waiting. The ambassador was sweating through his formal suit despite the cool air. Military personnel lined the walls, trying to look ceremonious rather than threatening. Everyone knew the Thalvex could destroy their entire colony without effort. This meeting was humanity's chance to prove they were worth talking to. The ship's door opened. A ramp extended, made of the same crystalline material as the ship itself. Figures began to emerge. They were tall, perhaps 8 feet high, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. They wore long robes that seemed to flow like water. But everyone's eyes went to the figure in the center. Empress Velmara was stunning in a way that made the human brain struggle to process. She looked vaguely humanoid, but clearly was not human. Her face was angular and perfect, her eyes large and completely silver with no visible pupil. She wore a crown that seemed to be made of frozen starlight. She moved with the kind of grace that came from thousands of years of absolute power. "She looks like the Ice Princess from my storybook," Hana whispered. Ambassador Tae-sung stepped forward and began his carefully prepared speech. Daehyun only half listened. He was watching the technical readouts, making sure all systems remained stable. The Thalvex technology was so advanced that it sometimes interfered with human equipment. Hana tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, I need to use the bathroom. Can you wait a few minutes, honey?" "I really need to go." Daehyun glanced at the ceremony below. It would probably last another hour. He couldn't make his daughter wait that long. He caught the eye of his sister Sujin, who was working security nearby. "Can you watch her? Just to the bathroom and back?" Sujin nodded and took Hana's hand. Daehyun turned back to his monitors, relieved. The diplomatic greeting was proceeding smoothly. Ambassador Tae-sung was presenting gifts according to the protocols they had studied for months. 10 minutes passed. Daehyun frowned. Sujin should have been back by now. He looked around the observation deck but didn't see either of them. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. He tapped his communicator. "Sujin? Where are you?" There was a pause. The bathroom near the east wing. Hana said she saw something shiny and ran off. "I'm looking for her now. Don't panic, don't panic." Easy to say. Daehyun's heart was already racing. The spaceport was huge. Hana was curious and fearless. She could be anywhere. He left his post and started moving through the corridors, calling her name quietly. He couldn't cause a scene during the diplomatic event, but he needed to find his daughter. Meanwhile, Hana had indeed seen something shiny. A reflection of light had caught her eye, leading her down a corridor and up a small staircase to a private observation deck. She pushed open the door and found herself in a beautiful room with huge windows showing the colony spread out below. Standing alone at the window was the Space Empress. Hana wasn't scared. She had been raised to be polite to everyone, no matter how different they looked. She walked up and stood beside the tall figure. "Hi," Hana said. "The view is really pretty from here." Velmara looked down. She had sensed the child approaching but had assumed a guardian would collect her. Instead, the small human simply stood there, smiling up at her. "Yes," Velmara said after a moment. Her voice was like crystal chimes. "It is pleasant." "Are you alone?" Hana asked. "That's sad." Do you want to meet my daddy? He's really nice. He makes the best pancakes and he knows lots of stories. The question struck Velmara like a physical blow. Are you alone? In 3,000 years, no one had ever asked her that. No one had ever seemed to care. She was the Empress. She was always surrounded by advisors, guards, subjects, and servants. But was she alone? The answer rose in her throat, unexpected and true. Yes, she was utterly alone. Velmara's silver eyes began to shimmer. Moisture gathered at their corners. She did not understand what was happening. Her species had tear ducts, but she had not cried since she was a child. Thousands of years ago, she began, but her voice caught. That was when Daehyun burst through the door out of breath and terrified. He saw his daughter standing next to the most powerful being in the known galaxy. The Empress was looking at Hana with an expression he couldn't quite read. Hana, I'm so sorry, Your Majesty, Daehyun said, rushing forward to scoop up his daughter. She wandered off. Please forgive the intrusion. Velmara raised one elegant hand. Wait, she said. The single word carried absolute authority. Daehyun froze. The Empress looked at Hana, then at Daehyun, then back at the child. Your daughter asked if I was alone, she said slowly. I find I do not know how to answer. Daehyun didn't know what to say. This was so far beyond the diplomatic protocols. Well, Hana said cheerfully, you're not alone now. You're with us. I'm Hana and this is my daddy Daehyun. We can be your friends if you want. Velmara stared at the child. Something ancient and frozen inside her chest began to crack. She reached up and touched her own face, feeling the wetness there with wonder. I am weeping, she said, as if discovering something impossible. I had forgotten this was possible. Daehyun carefully set Hana down but kept a hand on her shoulder. He didn't understand what was happening, but he recognized pain when he saw it, no matter how alien the face. Would you like to sit down, Your Majesty? He asked gently. Velmara nodded slowly. For the first time in 3 millennia, she accepted help from another being. She sat on the bench by the window, the most powerful empress in the galaxy, and cried while a 6-year-old human child patted her hand and told her everything would be okay. Velmara sat in her private chamber aboard the crystalline ship. The meeting with the human diplomats had been postponed. She had told her advisors she needed time to consider the terms of alliance. This was a lie. She simply could not stop thinking about the child's question. Are you alone? 3,000 years of memory pressed against her mind. The Thalvex did not forget. Every moment of her long life was preserved perfectly in her consciousness. She could recall her first breath as clearly as the moment the child had looked up at her with concern. She had been born on the Thalvex homeworld when it was still young and green. Her people lived for thousands of years naturally. They were beautiful, intelligent, and powerful. They had conquered their solar system before humans learned to make fire. By the time they reached the stars, they had perfected every art and science. But they had also perfected something else. Distance. Velmara remembered her parents. They had been dutiful in raising her. They provided education, resources, and training. But love, affection, those were considered primitive emotions. Weakness. The Thalvex believed that true strength came from independence. Attachment was a flaw to be overcome. When Velmara showed exceptional intelligence and power, her parents celebrated by sending her away to the Imperial Academy. She was 5 years old. She did not see them again for 200 years. When she finally returned home, they greeted her with the same formal politeness they would show any distinguished visitor. She had not cried then. She had learned not to. At the academy, Velmara excelled. She mastered war, politics, science, and art. She made herself into a perfect instrument of the Empire's will. She had companions, of course. Other students who were equally brilliant and ambitious. But Thalvex friendships were like business arrangements, mutually beneficial and easily dissolved when circumstances changed. Velmara rose through the ranks quickly. By the time she was 300 years old, she commanded fleets. By 500, she governed star systems. At 800, she led the conquest of the rebellious southern territories. The old emperor had been impressed. He named her his heir. When he died 50 years later, she ascended to the throne. She was 900 years old and had already forgotten what it felt like to care about anyone. The empire grew under her rule. She was brilliant and ruthless. She crushed rebellions, expanded territories, and brought prosperity through strength. Her subjects respected her. Some even admired her. But none of them loved her. Love was not part of Thalvek's culture. She took consorts occasionally. Beautiful individuals who were honored to share her bed for a decade or two. But these were arrangements of pleasure and politics, not feeling. When they aged and died or simply moved on, she felt nothing. She was supposed to feel nothing. That was the Thalvek's way. Over the centuries, Velmara watched her advisors come and go. Some served her for hundreds of years before retiring or dying. She knew their names, their skills, their ambitions. But she did not know them. Not really. They were tools, even the most loyal ones. She had outlived entire generations. Species she had negotiated with had gone extinct. Stars she had watched being born had grown old. Through it all, Velmara remained constant, unchanging, alone in her perfection. And she had thought this was strength. A knock on her chamber door pulled her from her memories. "Enter," she said. Her chief advisor, a male named Korvan, stepped inside. He was young by Thalvek standards, only 400 years old. He had served her for 70 years and was considered one of her most trusted counselors. "Majesty, the human ambassador wishes to reschedule the talks." "Shall I tell him tomorrow?" Velmara looked at him. Really looked at him. She knew he had been born on the northern colonies. She knew his parents had been generals. She knew he had studied at the same academy she had attended. But did she know what made him laugh? What made him sad? Did he have anyone he cared about? "Korvan," she said slowly, "are you alone?" He blinked, confused. "Majesty, I do not understand the question. Do you have companions? Friends? Someone who cares if you are sad?" Korvan looked deeply uncomfortable. "I have colleagues, Majesty, and I serve you. That is sufficient, is it?" she asked. He did not answer. He looked away, and for just a moment she saw something in his expression, a flicker of the same emptiness she felt in herself. "Tell the ambassador I wish to meet with the engineer," Velmara said suddenly. "The engineer, Majesty? Do you mean Ambassador Taesung?" "No, the engineer with the child, Daehyun. I wish to speak with him and his daughter." Korvan's confusion deepened. "For what purpose, Majesty?" "I wish to understand something," Velmara said. "The humans have something we do not. I saw it today. I need to learn what it is. Majesty, we are superior to humans in every measurable way. What could they possibly have that we lack?" Velmara thought about the little girl patting her hand, the genuine concern in her eyes, the way the father had looked at his child with such obvious love and protectiveness, the warmth between them visible even to an outsider. "They have each other," Velmara said quietly. "Truly have each other, and I am beginning to understand that we have nothing at all." Korvan did not know how to respond to this. He bowed and left to deliver her request. Velmara turned back to the window. Below, she could see the human colony spreading across the planet's surface. Small buildings clustered together. Streets full of people moving about their lives. It looked chaotic compared to the orderly perfection of Thalvek cities, but there was something else there. Something alive. She thought about her palace on the homeworld. Vast halls of crystal and light, thousands of servants, everything arranged in flawless beauty. She could walk for an hour through those halls and never see the same room twice. It was magnificent. It was also completely empty. She had rooms she had not entered in decades. Treasures she had forgotten she owned. Gardens that bloomed for no one. All of it perfect. All of it meaningless. When had it become meaningless? She tried to remember a time when she had been happy. Truly happy. Not satisfied with an accomplishment or pleased with a victory, but genuinely happy to be alive. She could not remember such a time. The little human child had asked if she was alone. The answer had struck her like a blade. Yes, she was alone. She had always been alone. She had built an empire that spanned star systems, commanded armies that could shatter planets, accumulated wisdom that filled libraries, and she had no one to share any of it with, no one to laugh with, no one to cry with, no one who would mourn her when she eventually died, thousands of years from now. The Thalveks believed attachment was weakness. They had built their entire civilization on independence and strength. But sitting in her chamber, Velmara wondered if they had simply been afraid. Afraid of the pain that came with caring. Afraid of the loss that followed love. They had chosen to feel nothing so they would never be hurt. But in doing so, had they lost the ability to feel anything at all? Tomorrow, she would meet with the engineer and his daughter again. She would ask them questions. She would try to understand this thing called family, This concept of connection that seemed so natural to humans and so foreign to her own people. She did not know what she would discover, but for the first time in 3,000 years, Velmara felt something she had thought long dead: curiosity, hope, and beneath it all, a desperate longing for something she could not name. She touched her face where the tears had fallen earlier. The sensation had been strange but not unpleasant. It had felt like waking up after a long sleep. Perhaps, she thought, it was not too late to learn how to live. Dae-hyun stood in his small living room, trying to make it look presentable. He had cleaned the night before, but toys still scattered the floor, and dishes sat in the sink. He picked up Hana's stuffed animals and stacked them neatly on the couch. Then he wondered if he should hide them completely. Would an alien empress think toys were inappropriate? "Daddy, why are you being weird?" Hana asked, watching him from the doorway. "I'm not being weird. I'm just cleaning. You cleaned last night, and this morning. You're definitely being weird." Dae-hyun sighed. His daughter was too smart for her own good. "The Empress is coming to visit. I want our home to look nice." "It already looks nice," Hana said. "It looks like us." There was wisdom in that, Dae-hyun thought. He stopped fussing with the cushions and went to the kitchen to start breakfast. It was still early, but the Empress had requested to see a normal morning routine. He had no idea why, but you didn't refuse when an Empress asked for something. His sister Soo-jin arrived just as he was setting the table. She looked as nervous as he felt. "Commander Byung-ho called me 3 times this morning," she said. "He wanted to know if we needed security." "What did you tell him?" "That if the Empress wanted to harm us, a dozen soldiers wouldn't make any difference." He didn't like that answer. The doorbell chimed exactly at 7. Dae-hyun wiped his hands on a towel and went to answer it. He had expected guards, advisors, maybe a whole delegation. Instead, Velmara stood alone on his doorstep. She wore simpler robes than before, though they still shimmered with that otherworldly quality. Her silver eyes studied him carefully. "Good morning," she said. "I hope I am not too early." "No, not at all. Please, come in." Dae-hyun stepped aside, very aware of how small and plain his home must look to someone who lived in a crystal palace. Velmara entered slowly, looking at everything. Her gaze moved over the worn couch, the pictures on the walls, the jacket hanging by the door. She seemed to be trying to understand a foreign language written in furniture and family photos. "Wayne." "Space Queen is here." Hana ran over and took Velmara's hand without hesitation. "Do you want to see my room? I have a fish tank." "I would like that," Velmara said. The child's easy affection clearly surprised her, but she allowed herself to be led down the hall. Soo-jin raised her eyebrows at Dae-hyun. He shrugged. Nothing about this situation made sense, so they might as well go with it. When they returned, Dae-hyun had breakfast ready. Pancakes, eggs, and fruit. Simple food, but Hana's favorite. Velmara sat at their small table, looking uncertain for the first time since she had arrived. "Do you eat?" Hana asked. "Some aliens in my books don't eat like we do." "I do eat," Velmara said, "though I have not had a meal like this in a very long time." She took a small bite of pancake. Her expression shifted, becoming thoughtful. "This is good. You made this yourself?" "Every morning," Dae-hyun said. "Hana won't eat anything else for breakfast." "You prepare food for your child daily?" Velmara asked. "Does your position as chief engineer not require early hours?" "I adjust my schedule. Hana comes first." Velmara watched him cut Hana's pancakes into smaller pieces without being asked. She saw the way he poured juice at just the right level because Hana preferred her cup half full. Small gestures, automatic and unconsidered, but each one spoke of deep attention and care. "Tell me about your day," Velmara said. "What happens? After breakfast?" Hana answered eagerly, talking about school and friends and how they were learning about planets. Dae-hyun listened while cleaning up, occasionally adding details. After breakfast, he braided Hana's hair while she chattered about a drawing she wanted to make. Velmara watched his hands move through the child's dark hair with practiced ease. "This is a daily ritual?" she asked. She likes her hair braided. "I'm not very good at it, but I try." Daddy's the best at braids, Hana said loyally. Aunt Sujin makes them too tight. Sujin laughed from where she was packing Hana's lunch. That's because you wiggle around like a fish. The morning continued. Dae-hyun packed Hana's school bag, checking that she had her homework and her lunch. He reminded her about her library book that was due back. He kissed her forehead and told her to be good. Will you be here when I get home? Hana asked Velmara. If your father permits it, yes. Yay, we can play blocks. After Sujin took Hana to school, the house felt very quiet. Dae-hyun made tea and sat across from Velmara at the table. Thank you for allowing me to observe, Velmara said formally. Can I ask why you wanted to? Velmara was quiet for a long moment. Your daughter asked me if I was alone. The question disturbed me. I realized I did not understand what it meant to not be alone. So I came to learn. Dae-hyun thought about this. Being not alone means having people who matter to you, people you take care of and who take care of you. It's not about how many people are around. It's about connection. My species does not form such connections, Velmara said. We consider them weakness. Are they? Weak, I mean? I believed so. Now I am uncertain. She looked around the room again. Her eyes stopped on a photo on the wall. A woman holding baby Hana, laughing at the camera. That's my wife, Ji-woo, Dae-hyun said quietly. She died 2 years ago. Illness. I am sorry for your loss, Velmara said. The words sounded formal, but there was genuine feeling behind them. Thank you. Some people told me I was weak for grieving so long, that I should move on quickly for Hana's sake. But I don't think loving someone and missing them is weakness. It's just proof that they mattered. Velmara stared at the photo. You still love her? I always will. That doesn't stop me from living or taking care of Hana. It's just part of who I am now. On my world, when someone dies, we acknowledge their accomplishments and then erase their personal effects. We believe holding on to the past prevents growth. Do you think that's true? Dae-hyun asked. Velmara thought about her 3,000 years of life, all the people who had passed through it, advisors, servants, brief companions. She could barely remember most of their names. They had been erased, just as her culture demanded. I think, she said slowly, that I have grown very tall but not at all deep. They spent the day together. Dae-hyun worked from home, checking systems remotely. Velmara watched him balance work with household tasks. She asked questions constantly. Why did he keep flowers on the table? Because they made the house feel alive. Why did he have so many photos? Because memories mattered. Why did he play music while cooking? Because it made him happy. Every answer revealed something his culture took for granted, but hers had abandoned. When Hana came home from school, she ran to hug her father. Then she remembered Velmara and offered her a hug too. The Empress stiffened, unsure how to respond. Hana just squeezed her waist and pulled back, already moving on to talk about her day. But Velmara stood frozen. That brief contact freely given had felt like electricity. When was the last time someone had touched her with simple affection? Not ceremony, not duty, just honest warmth. She could not remember. Perhaps never. That evening, Dae-hyun made dinner while Hana did homework at the kitchen table. Velmara sat with the child, asking about her schoolwork. They played blocks after dinner, building towers and laughing when they fell. At bedtime, Hana showed Velmara her routine. Brush teeth, put on pajamas, pick out a story. Dae-hyun read aloud while Hana cuddled against his side. Before sleep, she kissed the photo of her mother. Good night, Mommy, Hana whispered. I love you. Then she looked at Velmara. Do you have anyone to say goodnight to? Velmara's throat felt tight. No, I do not. That's really sad, Hana said. Then she smiled. But now you can say goodnight to us. Good night, Space Queen. I love you. The words hit Velmara like a physical force. I love you, said so easily, so naturally. As if love was not a weakness to overcome, but a gift to share. Good night, Hana, Velmara managed to say. I am glad I met you." Outside, walking back to her ship, Velmara felt the tears again. But this time, they did not frighten her. She was beginning to understand what they meant. They meant she was waking up. After 3,000 years of sleep, she was finally learning to feel, and it hurt. But it also felt like coming home. 3 weeks passed. Velmara came to visit almost every day. Her advisors were confused and concerned. The negotiations with humanity were going nowhere because their empress seemed more interested in playing with a human child than discussing trade agreements. Corvin tried to raise his concerns. "Majesty, the council is asking when we will finalize the alliance terms. They do not understand the delay." "Tell them I am conducting important research," Velmara said. She was sitting on the floor of Hana's room, helping to arrange toy spaceships. This would have been unthinkable a month ago. An empress did not sit on floors, but she found she did not care about such rules anymore. "Research, Majesty, into what makes humans strong despite their weakness, into why their short lives hold more meaning than our long ones, into why a child shows more wisdom than my entire court." Corvin did not know how to respond to this. He bowed and left, feeling deeply troubled. Velmara did not notice his worry. She was too busy learning. She went to the market with Daehyun and Hana, watching people greet each other warmly. She attended a school event where parents cheered for their children's simple drawings. She sat in the park and observed families playing together, laughing over nothing important, and slowly, the ice around her heart continued to crack. One afternoon, Daehyun took her to meet grandmother Miran. The old woman lived nearby and often helped watch Hana. She was 78 years old, which Velmara knew was considered quite old for humans. Miran opened her door and smiled at Velmara without any fear or formal ceremony. "Ah, you're the space empress Hana talks about constantly. Come in, come in. I made tea." The casual welcome startled Velmara. She was used to formal greetings, bowing, carefully measured words. Miran simply waved her to a chair as if she were any ordinary visitor. "You're very tall," Miran said, pouring tea. "Does your back hurt?" "My grandson is tall and always complaining about his back. No, I do not experience back pain," Velmara said, genuinely confused by the question. "Lucky you. Getting old is just one pain after another, but still better than the alternative." Miran laughed at her own joke. They drank tea together. Miran talked about her life, her children and grandchildren, her late husband who had died 10 years ago. She spoke of him with such warmth that Velmara could almost see him in the room with them. "Do you still miss him?" Velmara asked. "Every day," Miran said simply. "But I'm grateful I had him at all. 45 years together. Not nearly enough, but more than some people get." "You are grateful for pain?" Velmara asked. "You would not prefer to have never loved so you would not have to grieve?" Miran looked at her with sudden sharp understanding. "Oh, child. You're one of those people who thinks protecting yourself from hurt is the same as being strong. Is it not? No. Being strong is loving people even though you know you'll lose them someday. Being strong is choosing to feel everything, good and bad instead of nothing at all." Velmara felt something break inside her chest. The old woman had seen through 3,000 years of careful control in a single conversation. "I do not know how to do that," Velmara whispered. "I have forgotten how to feel. Or perhaps I never learned." Miran reached over and patted her hand. The gesture was so simple, so kind that Velmara nearly started crying again. "It's never too late to learn," Miran said. "You're here, aren't you? That's a start." That evening there was a community dinner in the colony's central hall. Daehyun invited Velmara to come. She agreed, curious about this human custom. The hall was full of people, loud and chaotic. Children ran between tables while adults talked and laughed. Food was shared freely, with people bringing dishes they had made at home. It was nothing like formal Talvex gatherings, which were quiet. Orderly affairs with assigned seating and careful protocols. This was messy, warm, alive. Velmara sat with Daehyun, Hana, Sujin, and Miran. But people kept stopping by their table to introduce themselves. They were curious about her, but not afraid. They asked questions about her ship, her world, what she thought of their colony. Some of the questions were foolish, but they were asked with genuine interest. A man named Jae-min, who ran the colony's gardens, told her about the vegetables he was growing. A woman named Bora, who taught at the school, shared stories about her students. A young couple, Hosuk and Minna, showed her pictures of their new baby. Everyone wanted to include her in their circle. Not because she was an empress, but simply because she was there. Halfway through the evening, Velmara excused herself and stepped outside. She needed air, needed space to process what she was feeling. She stood under the alien stars, trying to understand the sensation in her chest. It felt like drowning and flying at the same time. It hurt, but it was also wonderful. Daehyun found her there. "Are you all right?" "I am overwhelmed," Velmara admitted. "Your people welcome me so easily. They share their lives with me as if I am not a stranger, as if I am not someone who could destroy their entire world if I wished." "That's the thing about community," Daehyun said. "We choose to trust. We choose to be open. Yes, it's a risk, but it's worth it. On my world, trust is considered foolish. Opening yourself to others is weakness. And has that made your people happy?" Velmara thought about the Thalvex. Their beautiful, empty cities. Their long lives filled with accomplishments but devoid of meaning. Their strength that was really just loneliness dressed up in pride. "No," she said quietly. "We are not happy. I do not think we have been happy for a very long time." Movement caught her eye. 3 figures were approaching quickly from the shadows. Velmara's enhanced senses identified them immediately as Thalvex. Her hand moved instinctively to the weapon she always carried hidden in her robes. "Daehyun, get inside," she said sharply. But it was too late. The attackers were upon them. They were soldiers, she realized, from the traditionalist faction within her own government. They believed she was being corrupted by contact with humans. They had come to remove that problem. Velmara fought with the skill of 3,000 years. But there were 3 of them, and they were well trained. She managed to disable one, but the second got past her guard, blade raised to strike Daehyun. The human engineer did something foolish and brave. Instead of running, he threw himself forward, pushing Velmara out of the path of the blade. He took the hit meant for her, the energy weapon cutting across his shoulder. Velmara felt rage like she had not experienced in centuries. She disabled the second attacker with brutal efficiency, then turned on the third. He fled into the darkness. Daehyun was on the ground, bleeding. Velmara dropped beside him, her hands shaking. "Why did you do that?" "You fool, why?" "Hana needs you," Daehyun said through gritted teeth. "You're important to her. I am a stranger." "I am not worth your life." "You're not a stranger," he said. "You're our friend." Sujin burst out of the hall with others behind her. They surrounded them, checking wounds, calling for medical help. Velmara watched them move with practiced coordination. This community took care of its own, and apparently they had decided she was one of their own. In that moment, Velmara understood something fundamental. These humans, with their short lives and fragile bodies, were not weak. They were incredibly strong. Strong enough to love. Strong enough to risk. Strong enough to protect each other even when it made no logical sense. They had something her entire advanced civilization had lost. They had each other, truly, deeply, meaningfully. And looking at Daehyun bleeding because he had protected her, at Hana crying and running to her father, at the community gathering to help, Velmara realized something terrifying and wonderful. She wanted this. She wanted to be part of this messy, painful, beautiful thing called connection. She wanted to belong. Medical personnel arrived and took Daehyun away. Velmara stood watching, her robe stained with his blood. Hana grabbed her hand, holding tight. "He'll be okay, right?" the child asked, looking up at her with terrified hope. "Yes," Velmara said, pulling the child close. "He will be fine. I promise." It was the first promise she had made in 3,000 years that actually meant something. And standing there, holding a frightened child and feeling her own heart break open, Velmara finally understood what she had been missing all along. This pain, this fear, this desperate caring. This was what it meant to be alive. Velmara sat by Daehyun's bedside in the Colony Medical Center. The wound had been serious but not life-threatening. Human doctors had worked quickly and their medicine was surprisingly effective. He would recover fully within a week, but Velmara could not stop staring at the bandages on his shoulder. He had taken that hit for her. No one had ever done such a thing before. In Thalvex society, self-sacrifice was considered irrational. You preserved yourself. Always. Daehyun opened his eyes and smiled weakly. "You're still here. Where else would I be?" Velmara asked. "Running your empire? Negotiating treaties?" Important Empress things? Nothing is more important than this, she said. The words came out fierce, surprising them both. Hana was curled up asleep in a chair, exhausted from crying. Sujin had finally convinced her that her father would be fine, but the child had refused to leave. She was terrified, Velmara said quietly. When she saw you bleeding, she screamed. I have heard screams of fear before in battle, but never like that. Never from someone so small feeling so much. That's love, Daehyun said. It makes everything bigger. Joy is bigger, but so is fear. I do not understand why you protected me, Velmara said, her voice breaking slightly. You could have died, for what? I am not your responsibility. Daehyun looked at her with those warm, human eyes. You're Hana's friend. That makes you family, and we protect family. I am not family. I am not even the same species. Family isn't about blood or species, Daehyun said. It's about choice. Who you choose to love. Who you choose to protect. Hana chose you. So did I. Velmara felt tears again. She was crying constantly now, it seemed. 3,000 years of held emotion pouring out all at once. Why choose me? Because you needed someone to choose you, Daehyun said simply. Because you've been alone for so long, you forgot what it felt like to matter to anyone. Because Hana saw that immediately, and she was right. A knock on the door interrupted them. Corvin entered, looking deeply uncomfortable. Majesty, we need to discuss the attack. Velmara stood, her posture shifting back to imperial authority. Who sent them? A faction of traditionalists. They believe your contact with humans is corrupting you, making you weak. Weak, Velmara repeated. She looked at Daehyun, injured because he had been brave enough to protect her. She looked at Hana, who loved so fiercely her whole body shook with it. She thought about Miran, still carrying grief and joy together after all these years. They understand nothing, Velmara said coldly. These humans have taught me more about strength in 3 weeks than our entire civilization has learned in 3,000 years. Majesty, with respect, humans are fragile. They live such short lives. They feel too much. How can that be strength? Velmara moved to the window, looking out at the colony. Even late at night, she could see lights in windows. Families together. Friends visiting. Community existing. Tell me, Corvan, she said. How many people would take a blade for you? He hesitated. Majesty, if someone attacked you, how many people would risk their own life to save yours? How many would grieve if you died? Corvin could not answer. Exactly, Velmara said. You are 400 years old. You have served me loyally for 70 of those years, and yet no one truly cares if you live or die. Not even me, though you are one of my most valued advisors, because we have built a civilization where such caring is forbidden. It is the Thalvex way. The Thalvex way is broken, Velmara said flatly. We are strong, yes. We live long. We conquer everything. But we have no one to conquer for, no one to share victory with. We are alone in our strength, and that makes us empty. She turned back to face him. This human Daehyun almost died protecting me. Not because I ordered him to, not because of duty, but because he cares. His daughter cares. Their entire community cares. They are connected in ways we have forgotten, and that connection gives them power we cannot match. Power to die for each other? Corvan asked skeptically. Power to live for each other, Velmara corrected. Do you know why they build communities? Why they form families? Because they know their lives are short. They know they are fragile, so they choose to matter to each other. They choose to make their brief time mean something. She moved closer to him. We live for thousands of years, Corvan. And what do we do with all that time? We accumulate, we achieve, we perfect ourselves. But we do not connect. We do not love. We do not belong to anything except our own ambitions. Tell me, is that truly strength, or is it just a very long loneliness? Corvan looked shaken. What are you saying, Majesty? I am saying I was wrong. Our entire civilization is wrong. We thought we were superior to species that love and grieve and connect. But we are not superior. We are crippled. We have cut off the part of ourselves that makes life worth living. The traditionalists will not accept this, Corvan warned. I do not care what they accept, Velmara said with ice in her voice. I am Empress, and I am going to change everything. Over the next few days, as Daehyun recovered, Velmara made a decision. She would stay in the colony longer. She would learn everything she could about human connection, human community, human love, and then she would take that knowledge back to her people. She spent her days with the humans. She went to children's school plays and watched parents beam with pride. She attended a wedding and saw two people promise their lives to each other, knowing they might only have 50 years together but choosing it anyway. She sat with elderly people who spoke of lives well lived, not because of achievements but because of who they had loved. One afternoon, Grandmother Miran invited her for tea again. The old woman studied her carefully. "You've changed," Miran said. "Your face is different." "I do not think my physical appearance has altered. Not your face. Your expression. You smile now. Real smiles, not polite ones. And your eyes aren't so empty anymore." Velmara thought about this. "I feel different. I feel more. Everything is more. It is overwhelming sometimes." "That's what being alive feels like," Miran said. "Overwhelming and wonderful and terrible all at once. Welcome to the human condition." "I am not human." "No, but you're learning to live like one. That's what matters." Velmara looked at her hands. "On my world, I am considered the greatest empress in our history. I have conquered more than anyone, achieved more, built more. But here, sitting with you, I feel like a child learning to walk." "Because you are," Miran said gently. "You're learning to walk through life with others instead of alone. That's harder than conquering empires." "Why is it so hard?" "Because it requires something conquest doesn't. It requires letting people matter. And once they matter, you can lose them. That's scary." Velmara thought about Daehyun almost dying, the terror she had felt, the way her hands had shaken. "Yes, it is terrifying. But you're doing it anyway. That's brave." "I do not feel brave. I feel fragile." Miran laughed. "That's what brave is, dear. Being scared and doing it anyway." That evening, Velmara returned to find Daehyun back at home, arm in a sling but recovering well. Hana ran to hug her the moment she arrived. "We're making dinner. Daddy says you can help." Velmara found herself in the kitchen, learning to chop vegetables under Daehyun's instruction. She had commanded armies but had never cooked a meal. The task was oddly satisfying. "You're a natural," Daehyun said, watching her precise cuts. "I have very steady hands. Useful in surgery. Or cooking, apparently." They laughed together. Velmara realized she was laughing more lately. The sound still surprised her sometimes, coming from her own mouth. After dinner, Hana brought out a board game. They played together, the three of them. Velmara learned the rules quickly but found she did not care about winning. She just enjoyed being there, part of the laughter and teasing. At bedtime, Hana asked if Velmara would read the story tonight. Velmara read about brave knights and clever princesses, and Hana fell asleep against her side. Daehyun carefully picked up his daughter to carry her to bed. Velmara followed, watching him tuck her in gently. "Thank you," Velmara said quietly as they left the room. "For what?" "For showing me what I was missing. For letting me be part of this. For caring about me even though I gave you no reason to." Daehyun smiled. "You don't need a reason to care about someone. You just do," Velmara understood now. This was humanity's secret. This was why they mattered, why they would always matter, despite being small and fragile and brief. They chose love over logic, connection over safety. They lived bravely in a universe that would eventually take everything from them, and in doing so, they made every moment matter. Velmara finally understood what strength really meant. It meant being vulnerable enough to care, brave enough to love, strong enough to choose connection even knowing it would hurt. She had been strong for 3,000 years. But only now was she learning to be brave. The message came at dawn. Velmara was having breakfast with Daehyun and Hana when her communication device chimed urgently. She read the message and her expression went cold. "What is it?" Daehyun asked, recognizing trouble immediately. "The traditionalist faction has made their move. They have declared me unfit to rule. They claim I have been corrupted by humans and abandoned the Thalvex way. They are demanding I return immediately to face judgment. What happens if you don't go?" "Civil war," Velmara said quietly. "They have significant military support. If I do not address this, the Empire will tear itself apart." Hana looked scared. "You're leaving?" Velmara knelt down to the child's level. "I must, but I will return. I promise." "Promises can be broken," Hana whispered, thinking of her mother who had promised to always be there. The words hit Velmara hard. She pulled the child close. "I will not break this promise. I have learned too much here to give up now. You showed me how to live. I will not forget that." She stood, her expression hardening into something imperial and dangerous. And I will not let them take this away from me. Within hours, Velmara was aboard her ship surrounded by her loyal advisors. Korvan briefed her on the situation. It was worse than she had thought. General Karvan, one of the most powerful military leaders, was leading the traditionalists. He had support from nearly half the Empire's forces. He claims you have become weak, Korvan said, that your time with humans has made you unfit to rule. He is calling for your removal and the restoration of pure Thalvex values. Pure Thalvex values, Velmara repeated bitterly. He means emptiness, loneliness dressed up as strength. Majesty, we must respond carefully. If we handle this wrong, thousands will die. Velmara thought about everything she had learned. About community, about choosing to care even when it was risky, about being brave enough to be vulnerable. Korvan, tell me honestly, do you think I have become weak? He hesitated, then spoke carefully. I think you have become different, Majesty. Whether that is weakness or not, I am no longer certain. That is more honesty than I expected. Thank you. She turned to look out at the stars. I am going to do something unprecedented. I am going to tell them the truth. Majesty, I am going to broadcast to the entire Empire, and I am going to tell them what I learned from humans. I am going to tell them we have been wrong. That is very dangerous. Yes. But so is living for thousands of years without ever truly living. Back on the colony, Daehyun tried to go about his normal routine, but he found himself distracted, worried about Velmara. Hana was subdued, playing quietly with her toys instead of her usual energetic self. That evening, Sujin came by. Have you heard the news? What news? The Thalvex Empire is in chaos. There's some kind of internal conflict. They're saying the Empress might be overthrown. Daehyun felt his stomach drop. Hana looked up, her eyes wide. Is she in danger? I don't know, sweetie. Commander Byung-ho arrived an hour later with more information. We're picking up broadcasts from the Thalvex network. Your friend the Empress is making some kind of statement. It's being transmitted empire-wide. You should see this. They set up a screen in Daehyun's living room. The image showed Velmara standing before what looked like the entire Thalvex government council. She looked small and alone, facing hundreds of her own people, but her voice was strong. I have been Empress for 2,000 years, Velmara began. In that time, I have never questioned our way of life. I believed, as you all believe, that we are superior to other species, that our long lives and great power make us the pinnacle of civilization, that our independence and strength are virtues. I was wrong. A murmur went through the council. Velmara continued. I spent time among humans, brief creatures who live barely 100 years, fragile things who feel too much and care too deeply. I expected to find them weak. Instead, I found something we have lost. I found meaning. She told them about Hana, about a child who saw an empress and asked if she was alone, about a father who protected a stranger at risk to himself, about a community that welcomed an alien into their circle without hesitation. These humans know their lives are short, Velmara said, so they choose to make them matter. They form bonds. They love fiercely. They sacrifice for each other. Not because they are weak, but because they are brave. We Thalvex live for thousands of years. And what do we do with that time? We perfect ourselves in isolation. We achieve great things alone. We accumulate power we have no one to share with. We call this strength. But it is not strength. It is fear. Fear of pain.
Fear of loss.
Fear of caring about anything enough that it could hurt us. The council was in uproar now. General Karvan stood, his voice booming. You prove our point, false empress. You have been corrupted. You speak of weakness as if it were virtue. I speak of connection, Velmara said, her voice cutting through the noise. I speak of the courage to be vulnerable. I speak of choosing to live instead of merely existing. She looked directly at the camera, and Daehyun realized she was speaking not just to her people, but to him, to Hana, to everyone watching. General Karvan claims I am unfit to rule because I have learned to care. He is right. I am no longer the empress I was. I am something new, something better, and I challenge anyone who believes otherwise to face me. Not in battle, not in contest of power, but in the contest that truly matters. I challenge you to live as I have lived these past weeks, to open yourself to connection, to risk caring, to be brave enough to be vulnerable, and then tell me which is stronger, your isolation or my love. The broadcast ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos. In Daehyun's living room, Hana was crying. She's brave, just like the knights in the stories. Yes, Daehyun said, his own eyes wet. She is, but bravery did not guarantee victory. Over the next few days, reports came in. The empire was splitting. Some supported Velmara's radical ideas. Others rejected them violently. Fighting broke out in several sectors. Velmara's ship came under attack. Carvin's forces tried to capture her. She fought her way free, but barely. Many of her loyal guards died protecting her. She sent one final message to Daehyun. I am coming back to the colony. Carvin is hunting me. I will not lead him to you, but I need sanctuary. I need to regroup. Forgive me for bringing danger to your door. Commander Byung-ho called an emergency meeting. We need to decide if we're offering sanctuary or not. This could bring war to our colony. The community gathered. There was fear, yes, but also determination. Grandmother Miran stood up. That girl came to us lost and alone. We showed her how to be part of a family. Now she's in trouble. What kind of family would we be if we turned her away? One by one, people agreed. Yes, there was risk, but risk was part of caring. That was the lesson. The colony sent a message. Come home. We're waiting. Velmara's ship limped into orbit 2 days later, damaged and pursued. Carvin's fleet appeared right behind her, guns charged and ready to fire. The human colony activated its defenses. They were nothing compared to Thalvek's weapons. But they stood between Velmara and her hunters anyway. Commander Byung-ho broadcast to Carvin's fleet. The Empress is under our protection. If you attack her, you attack us. And we do not abandon our friends. It was a bluff. One good shot from the Thalvek ships could destroy the entire colony. Everyone knew it, but Carvin hesitated. He had expected the humans to be rational, to protect themselves. Instead, they were willing to die for someone not even their species. In that hesitation, something remarkable happened. Some of Carvin's own ships broke formation. Their captains had heard Velmara's broadcast. They had thought about her words. And they made a choice. They chose connection over isolation. They chose to believe in something worth fighting for. The fleet divided. Some stayed loyal to Carvin. Others moved to defend Velmara. And humans, fragile and small and impossibly brave, stood in the middle, protecting an alien empress who had learned to love. Velmara's ship landed in the colony. She emerged wounded and exhausted. Hana ran to her, crying and laughing at the same time. Daehyun was right behind. You came back, Hana sobbed. You kept your promise. Velmara knelt and held the child tight. I will always keep my promises to you. Always. Above them, ships positioned for battle. The civil war had come to their doorstep. But Velmara was no longer afraid. She had something worth fighting for now. She had family. The standoff lasted 3 days. Ships from both sides of the Thalvek Civil War orbited the colony, weapons ready but not firing. The humans below went about their lives with nervous determination, refusing to evacuate even though they knew they were sitting in the middle of a potential battlefield. Velmara spent those days planning. She met with the captains who had defected to her side, Thalveks who had listened to her words and felt something awaken inside them. They were confused, frightened by these new emotions, but also hopeful. One captain, a young female named Risa, spoke for many. I heard your broadcast, Majesty. I thought about my 1,000 years of life, and I realized I have accomplished much but felt nothing. When you spoke of the human child caring for you, I wept. I did not know I still could. That is because we have taught ourselves not to, Velmara said gently. We have spent millennia perfecting the art of not feeling, but these humans have reminded me that feelings are not weakness. They are what make life worth living. What do we do now, Majesty? General Carvin has more ships, more firepower. He has weapons, Velmara agreed, but we have something stronger. We have purpose. She sent a message to Carvin, broadcast openly so all could hear. General, you claim I am weak because I have learned to care. Let us test this. You and I, face to face. Not in battle, but in dialogue. Let our people decide who is right. Carvin's response was swift and contemptuous. There is nothing to discuss. You have betrayed everything the Thalvek stand for. You will surrender or you will die. Then you are afraid, Velmara said simply. Afraid that my words might be true. Afraid that these humans might have something you do not. Afraid that you have wasted your long life on nothing that matters. The insult struck deep. Carvin agreed to meet. if only to prove her wrong in person. They met in the colony's main hall, that same place where Velmara had first experienced a community dinner. Both sides were present, Thalvex and human. Weapons were forbidden. This would be decided with words. Carvin was impressive, nearly 9 feet tall, with the bearing of someone who had commanded armies for 2,000 years. He looked at Velmara with disgust. "You were the greatest of us," he said. "Now look at you, playing house with these primitive creatures, crying over children. You are pathetic." "I was empty," Velmara corrected. "For 3,000 years I was empty. I ruled an empire and had nothing. These primitive creatures taught me what we forgot. They taught me to be alive. They taught you to be weak." "No, they taught me to be strong." "Real strength. The strength to care even knowing I might lose what I care about. The strength to be vulnerable. The strength to choose connection over safety." Hana was sitting in the front row with Dae-hyun. She stood up suddenly, her small voice clear in the hall. "You're the one who's scared. You're scared that if you let yourself care about anyone, it might hurt. So you pretend not caring makes you strong, but it just makes you lonely." The 6-year-old child had just diagnosed the core wound of an entire civilization. The hall went silent. Carvin stared at her. "What does a child know of strength?" "She knows more than you," Velmara said. "She has loved and lost. Her mother died. It hurt her terribly. But she did not choose to never love again. She chose to love more. She chose to love me, a strange alien who could give her nothing. She chose it because love is not weakness. Love is the bravest thing there is." She turned to address everyone assembled. "I have lived for 3,000 years. I have conquered star systems. I have accumulated wealth and power beyond measure. And none of it meant anything until a child asked me if I was alone. That question broke me open. It forced me to see what I had become. What we have all become. We are the most advanced civilization in this sector. We live longer, know more, achieve more than any other species. And we are the loneliest beings in the universe. These humans live barely a century. They are fragile. They feel too much. And yet they have something we threw away millennia ago. They have each other. They have meaning. They have love. I do not want to go back to being what I was. I do not want to rule an empire of perfectly isolated individuals who have never truly lived. I want to teach our people what I learned. I want us to remember how to connect, how to care, how to be more than just long-lived automatons going through the motions of existence." She looked directly at Carvin. "You can kill me. You have the power. But you cannot kill what I have learned. Others have heard my words. Others are waking up. The change has begun and you cannot stop it." Carvin's face twisted with rage and something else. Something that looked like pain. "You speak of meaning and love. But what happens when you lose it? What happens when these humans you care about die? They will, you know. Soon a century is nothing. You will watch them age and fade while you remain. You will suffer that loss over and over with every connection you make. Is that the future you want?" Velmara felt the truth of his words. Yes, she would lose them. Taehyun, Hana, Miran, all of them. Their lives would pass in what felt like a moment to her. The pain would be enormous. "Yes," she said quietly. "I will lose them. I will grieve. It will hurt more than anything I have ever felt. And it will still be worth it." "Why?" Carvin demanded.
"Why choose pain?"
"Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is 3,000 years of feeling nothing. The alternative is safety purchased at the cost of meaning. I choose the pain. I choose the risk. I choose to live fully, even if it hurts." Grandmother Miran stood up from her seat. "General, may I speak?" Carvin looked surprised but nodded. The old woman walked to the center of the hall. "I am 78 years old. To you, that probably seems like nothing. I'll be dead before you even notice time passing. But I have lived more in these 78 years than you have in your thousands. I have loved my husband. I have raised children and watched them grow. I have held my grandchildren and taught them to bake bread. I have laughed with friends and cried at funerals. I have felt everything, and yes, much of it hurt. But I would not trade a single moment. You Thalviks are afraid of our short lives. You see them as weakness, but our short lives are what make us strong. We know we don't have forever, so we make every moment count. We love fiercely because we know it won't last. We choose connection because we understand how precious it is. You have all the time in the universe, and you waste it. That's not strength. That's tragedy." She turned to Velmara. "This one learned. She chose to feel. She chose to risk. She chose to be part of our little family. And that choice made her more alive than she's been in 3,000 years. You can see it in her eyes. Miran looked back at Carvin. The question is, are you brave enough to make the same choice? The general stood silent. Velmara could see the struggle on his face. He was feeling something, perhaps for the first time in centuries. The carefully constructed walls around his heart were cracking. He began, then stopped. His hands were shaking. I do not know how. No one does at first, Velmara said gently. But you learn, one moment at a time, one connection at a time. It is terrifying, but I promise you it is worth it. Carvin looked around the hall, at the humans watching with cautious hope, at his own soldiers, some of whom had tears on their faces, at Velmara, who looked more alive than any Thalvex he had ever seen. If I stand down, he said slowly. What then? How do we change millennia of culture? We start small, Velmara said. We learn from those who know. We let humans teach us what we forgot. We be patient with ourselves and each other. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable and afraid and uncertain. We learn to live. Carvin was silent for a long moment. Then, in a gesture that shocked everyone, he knelt. Not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. Teach me, he said. I do not want to spend another 1,000 years alone. The Civil War ended that day. Not with battle, but with choice. The choice to try. The choice to risk. The choice to be brave enough to be vulnerable. 5 years passed. The changes in Thalvex society were slow but real. Velmara stepped back from absolute rule, establishing a council system where voices could be heard. She spent half her time in the Empire and half on the human colony. The colony became known as a place of learning, where Thalvex came to understand connection. Human teachers like Miran ran workshops on community building. Daehyun taught classes on parenting and family bonds. Children like Hana showed Thalvex visitors how to play, how to laugh, how to simply be. It was messy and difficult. Old habits died hard. Many Thalvex struggled with emotions they had suppressed for centuries. But slowly, change came. On a sunny afternoon in the colony's 5th year as a cultural center, Velmara walked through the park with 11-year-old Hana. The girl was taller now, but still held Velmara's hand the way she had when she was 6. Are you happy? Hana asked. Yes, Velmara said, surprised by how easily the word came. I am happy. Good, because you're coming to Daddy's wedding next month. Yoonji says you have to help with decorations. Velmara laughed. Daehyun had found love again with Miran's granddaughter. It had taken time, but he had opened his heart. The wedding would be a joyful celebration. I would not miss it for anything, Velmara said. Yoonji wants you to be a flower girl with me. Is that okay? A flower girl? Is that not usually a role for children?